Jeremy, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. Just normal business things happening each morning, dealing with, but things are going pretty good.
What is normal? Because I find that whenever I wake up, nothing's too normal.
Yeah. Well, normal, is a little bit of chaos every morning. Everybody in what we do, everybody's scrambling to kind of get ahead of what's coming ahead in the day, and so there's a lot of calls in the morning about hey, how are we going to think about this? How are we going to do that? It's kind of similar to similar to a week. Every Monday's typically
Shit show
every Monday, and then everybody kind of gets aligned, and then the rest of the week flows out. It's kind of like that in the morning. Everybody's getting aligned, getting kind of a gauge on what's happening for the day, and then how we're going to move forward. So today was no different. A few issues that we're thinking about, specifically on some projects that we're trying to get some, give direction on and all that. So,
how do you know? How do you know when you've had a good week?
Wow, that's a great question. So for me, weeks are pretty structured for the most part, and that's by design. And so, our Fridays are lined up and organized with update calls. So, a lot of our client update calls are Friday. So the day is spent prepping for those calls, presenting on those calls. And so, when we get to the end of the day, that runs to about 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah.
And, depending at that point, it's a good kind of look back of like, okay, did we move the dial this week?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we're focused on, is like, did we create action? Did we move the dial this week? And, if it feels like that, then that's a pretty good week, I think.
Yeah. What I was thinking about is the alignment between the construction industry and my world, the architecture or design industry. And we've talked about it before. There's this innate division that starts from school,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, in order to break that down, in order to try to parallel those two worlds, finding success in one's day-to-day, week-to-week, or annual, or year, what does that mean? And oftentimes in our world, success is very random, right? So we can try to be as structured as we can, but that may not mean success for us, because you have to mix in a certain level of creativity, a certain level of objection, a certain level of randomness, which is not structured, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is structured in a way that would allow certain individuals to find their own success and therefore company success. So then, do you guys have that as well in terms of your day-to-day, or and your company's mindset? Is it approaching A, B, C, D, all the way through Z, and then success?
Well, I'll answer that, but I definitely want to circle back and ask you what does success look like, and how do you feel like you've moved the dial? It's interesting. So I feel and I've been doing this a long time, and our business is we try to make it really organized and linear, right? Step A before step B before step C. And so it's easier to track kind of progress, right? Because we've got to we build a map, i.e. a schedule that we're trying to adhere to. And that obviously that changes day to day, week to week as we go along, but we've got something to benchmark against, right? And so it's we're able to track that, and we're able to gauge some level of success from a schedule standpoint, right? So we've got 3 metrics that we try to adhere to, right? It's schedule, it's budget, and it's quality. And then there's a fourth. It's the client expectation. Are we meeting that from how does it feel right? How does this project feel outside of your schedule, budget, and quality? And so, we always strive to be kind of as successful as we can in all 4 areas. But, but I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like it's almost like we chase dopamine hits.
Sure. Oh,
You know what I mean?
Right.
And a dopamine hit is where it's like we overcome a problem.
Yeah.
That's what we deal with.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we deal with problems. And so, each day that we overcome, like this morning, there was an obstacle. We had a trade show up that was scheduled for today that has to happen. They have to complete their work today, or else we are going to be pushed off. And they show up today and find a reason why they can't do their work today, and they leave. So now we're dealing with how can we motivate them to get back on site and do their work. But no, I'm interested in what what success looks like to you on a daily and weekly basis.
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out, really. But success is many different things for me, because I have a personal success. I have success for all the employees that we have. I have success for the company. And day to day, I think you have to, for me, success is a slow moving train. Our worlds our projects are so long, our decisions take quite a while to see fruition. So, you could have your Richter scale on many different levels in terms of how do you make it through a day or a week or a month in order to find success. And it really, to be honest, it's a moving dial, and I'm still honestly trying to figure it out. You could base it on monetary. You could base it on a lot of things. And I think it has to be, there's probably an equilibrium there that I find success, right? So, are we working with the people that we want to work with? That's success to me. Are we able to pick and choose projects that we find fulfilling in a way that, that maintains staff interest, that maintains my interest? Are they profitable? Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the best projects are not profitable. And as an industry, I think that's normal. Not normal. It's unfortunately as a commonality between architects is you find that the creatives are so passionate they lose sight of business, right? You probably see that all the time. Mm-hmm. And so how do you inspire people to be creative while looking at the dollars? And that's real hard, man.
Yeah. From a creative standpoint, how do you know you're successful? So to take the financial component out, of did you make money on a particular project? Like from a truly creative standpoint, how do you know that like this is it? Like what is success? What is success from a creative standpoint?
Yeah. Well, it's different for everybody because creativity is subjective. Is this color better than the other color? I don't know. In my opinion, yeah. And then you may wake up the next day and it's different because your mood is different, right? So we have to manage all the feelings and the moods and the personalities. But, I think in terms of creativity, you can't base success on one thing or one aesthetic, right? So, we'll do some affordability projects that may not have the advantage of a big budget, right? So we're finding success that we're housing people that may not have that opportunity, but we know that we're providing housing that is going to better their life. Like that's really exciting and fun and interesting. We may do on the other scale, we may have the opportunity because we have a client that's really wanting to push the needle or move the needle in terms of the experience. And I think that if we can create an experience that betters either what was there or betters the typical experience that we find as our normalcy, that's real success. And sometimes you don't know until you finish the project, right? Yeah. And while we're in the process of the project, the success for me is working with a group that I enjoy, who's got my back, right? And when I can find that team, I want to hang on to it and go through thick or thin, right? Because we're going to fail all, continuously. It's about how do you fail and then problem solve and then fail again and then problem solve. And then when the dust clears, how can everybody shake hands and then enjoy what they did? Yeah. And then, the final climax is seeing people maneuver through whatever it is you created. Yeah. You're going to find some things that you didn't expect, and you're going to find some things that you did, and you make note about it, and you try to do better the next time, or you try to do equal the next time. So, I don't know, it's a big moving needle, and it's sometimes hard to see the light, to know that you're doing the right thing. So it's a lot of trust and faith about, all right, I think I'm going in the right direction, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you feel like you're staring off into the abyss of like, well, I know I need to go that direction and just keep going. No, it's interesting what you said about, finding, getting into a situation where, like what we've talked about before, it feels like a true collaboration on all sides. Not only from the client standpoint, but from the, the design team, the contractor team, the vendors, like having that mix of like, okay, everybody is bought into what we're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. And that's, sometimes rare, but like what we talked about is that, when I first started this company, that was the goal, is to like get into those relationships and look for it in clients, look for it in, employees that we want to bring to the team that has that collaboration, partnership mentality. And it's I find myself losing sight a little bit of that for the sake of trying to grow and scale,
Sure.
You find yourself in some of these relationships that's not as collaborative, where it's more
well, they're stepping stones, right?
Yeah.
You try to take on something that's going to get you to the next step. And I think that's inevitable, right? And in order to grow and scale, you have to do things that maybe you're uncomfortable with, and that's an experience that you learn and that you could say you walked through in order to get to the next thing. So I think all companies probably have that same experience.
I wonder if the discipline is, looking for more of those opportunities. Yeah, granted, you're going to have you're going to have some projects that just pay the bills, right? And are going to, that are stepping stones. Yeah. But I want to go. So I've always been curious about this. Kind of going back to asking you about success in the design. Yeah. Can you ever appreciate in the moment, like in the middle of a project, appreciate what it is and what you're doing, or do you find where you got to get some space between you and the project after it's done, to really fully appreciate what it was and how it kind of.
My wife always tells me that I'm never happy. That's not true. I think what I could say, though, is I'm not satisfied with the status quo. And so I find myself during the process wanting to do it better, no matter what. And so am I satisfied? No, not really, because these things are so heavily detailed and layered full of information that we can always do better. There's always something that we missed. There are moments, I think, in the process where there's a glimmer of light where I think, oh, this is going to be real interesting. Mm-hmm. Interesting could mean a bunch of different things to whoever you ask, but there are those moments, and I can see when a project's going to be successful. Not necessarily like aesthetically or architecturally, but the process is really what I enjoy. And when I can see that team alignment or that owner team alignment, and we're working through problems that are pretty hairy, but I know we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's success. You know, that's the kind of thing that kind of pumps me up in terms of doing something that other people may not be doing, because the thing that I'm most interested in, you know, personally, is our industry I think our industry, mine particularly, is so broken. Like we're an industry based on traditionalism. And anytime we can create a process that's not necessarily rocket science, but it's different, you know, in terms of how we operate, I think it's real. That's fucking fun.
Yeah.
And it may be a no-brainer, right? It may be something that, why not? Yeah, why don't we write our contracts like this? Or why don't we educate? Or why don't we reverse the education and how we bring interns in and stick them in construction and then teach them how to design? Like, why don't we do that? Everybody talks about it, but no one does it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, I think, will inevitably change the way that we're looked at as an architecture office, or whatever we, you know, eventually become. I think that's an avenue that's untapped. You know, that's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah. Do you find moments when you're able to change and try to move towards what you think it should be?
It's tough, man, because you have to have buy-in. You have to have buy-in from the builder. You have to have buy-in from the owner. And that's a unicorn.
Yeah.
And I think it will happen, but it's a tough, especially in the market today where things are dipping down and slowing down.
Yeah. But
I think it will come, because what I think we're doing right now in a slower market is we're planning, or I'm planning, and I'm trying to strategize. So yeah, it'll come. It's just a slow, you got to keep your eye on the prize. Right? It's slow moving. Our world, which is different from yours, you're in it for the long haul to find success.
Yeah. And
you don't know that as a young person, but as you get older, like me, and you've had battle scars, you realize, oh yeah, this is what I bought into.
Yeah. I continually remind myself even now that, like, this is what I signed up for, you know, because, I can rationally, you know, from an intellectual standpoint, understand what we do is we solve problems.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we have to go out and look for the problems, and the conflict and all that kind of stuff. And because if you know, we always say, if there wasn't problems, if it was easy, like, we wouldn't have a job.
Nobody ever do it. That's right.
If you could take a set of plans and go find all the trades and vendors and line all them up and write contracts, and then write a nice little schedule, and then say, okay, here it is, push it out, and then everything, you know, runs the way it should, then we wouldn't need kind of what we do in our services. But
how do you find good problem solvers?
Yeah, it's well, there's a creative aspect to that even.
Yeah,
you know, and so we're going through that now, and we're trying to build a team. You know, we, you know, and I learned this with Torchies. You know, when we were building teams inside of Torchies. You know, I wish I could say it was planned in the beginning, that when we were building that team, we started qualifying new people for their kind of intelligence, which is obvious, but their level of give a shit, and that kind of morphed into this mantra when we were hiring people. We're like, hey, look, we don't care about resumes. We care about, can we tell if you really give a shit?
Yeah.
You care.
Yeah.
And it seemed like everything else would fall in place after that. Now, obviously, there's a certain level of skill set that you need. There's a certain level of personality that we would look for. But to answer your question, like if you could get somebody that has a level of intelligence, obviously, but they give a shit, they'll be able to solve interesting problems. Right?
Yeah.
And so now, fast forward now when we're trying to hire people, and listen, we had a lot of success then and now hiring people to come do a job that they might not have a lot of relevant recent experience doing that.
Yeah.
In our world, we find that folks with a military background are pretty interesting because they've got a framework of problem solving that they learned, year after year that makes it a pretty interesting, complement. But there's a solution to almost everything, right? That you're going to encounter, right? There is a solution for everything that you're going to encounter, right?
That's right.
It might not be one that you like or love, but we're looking for people that give a shit and that can make things happen. So now we interview, I don't know, 5 or 6 people a week for different positions that we're trying to hire right now. And the conversation always goes to, hey, look, we're looking for somebody that cares and that can make shit happen. Because there's a lot of people that just let shit happen.
Yeah.
That's common right now, that people get into a position, they encounter problems and they just let it happen, right? Instead of people that are more proactive, that care about what the outcome is, and they actually make something happen. So we're looking for people that care and that can make shit happen.
Yeah.
And those are hard to find.
That will do their job and is willing to do somebody else's job.
Yeah.
When they find reason to do that.
Or consider somebody else's job and consider what somebody else may be going through, right? And that's where you get into the whole collaboration conversation. True collaboration is like, hey, we're working together as a team, obviously, and I'm gonna think about it from your angle as well as mine, to try to come with as much of a win-win situation to get past the inevitable issues that we're gonna encounter. And that takes a certain level of bravery. I think it takes a certain level of empathy for other people. And that's, again, we're talking about things that people don't talk about empathy in construction very much. It's people, they pay a lot of lip service to collaboration in construction, but it's, we're, again, not that I'm a construction historian, but I'm old enough now to look back, a little bit over 20 years and say, okay, well, when I first started, I could recognize that it was still a real command and control environment, and I grew up in a construction family and could see that in the men in my family that were in construction that held, either were an owner of a company or a supervisor in some aspect. And it was a real command and control, like, by God, you're going to do this because I told you to do it. Yeah. Right? We're hiring you.
That's right.
We're paying you, so you're gonna do this, and this. And that just doesn't work like that today.
Doesn't work like that. Yeah.
So it's, I think, kind of like you, our business is very traditional, but it's moving in a direction that we have to foster collaboration and communication, and more than just pay lip service to it. Yeah. You got to really own it. And then along with that comes empathy and consideration for other people. But at the same time, then you got to mix in accountability, and it's like, hey, like we're in a position that we have to create action. We have to keep progress moving. And so it's an interesting, I wish I could say that I've got the formula figured out, but
what I often talk about or realize is there's a thing called humility, right? That if you don't have humility, then, or you're not vulnerable in the moment, then you can't lead, right? Your employees, whoever they are, may not follow. And so what I do understand and I do practice in our office is humility and being vulnerable in a moment while trying to lead them through an occasion where we fell down, right? Here's what I did and here's how I solved it. But I still was in a leadership position where we tackled things as a group, or we owned our own mistakes and we problem solved our way through it. Like that's some of the things that are not taught very well in our industry, because if you fail or if you have a bad idea that someone laughs at or just calls bullshit on, you may squash that creativity. And if it does, it does, right? But you've got to I think you've got to walk the walk as an owner to show them that, hey, I had a shitty idea the other day and an intern told me it was a shitty and that was all right. Right. So I don't know that there's it's a top down theory. I think that I know you do as well, but then having that consistency as you grow is a real, is a formula that,
let me ask you this, because this is what I'm kind of going through right now. How do you, at the same time, give people autonomy and an opportunity to fail so that they learn, but at the same time hold them accountable and be able to delegate? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, it's a good question, and we try to treat people for individuals for where they're at, right? So I do, and it's a hard thing to do because we have a standard for everything and everyone, but we try to treat individuals for where they're at, what they know, where they're at, what kind of responsibility they can take, how much can they fail or sink and then rise. And a little bit of what we do is, if you want an opportunity, ask for it. We'll put you in it, no matter what level you are. But knowing that, you have to be okay with being in the fire, handling the fire, and then getting yourself out of the fire. And sometimes it's imperfect. Sometimes the flag comes up and we know you're drowning, but we're gonna let you feel that burn for a little bit until we can help you, come out of it. So I think it's just it's knowing someone's style of communication, what they're comfortable with. It's knowing if they can handle a client, if they can handle a builder, if they can handle us. So it really boils down to their level of communication and level of responsibility in a way. How they think how can they think through a project, whether it's in a certain phase, small design problem, or it's a detail. It does take time in order for an individual to have everything, I call it a Rolodex. It doesn't really make sense, but it's like this constant pathway of events that are going to happen. And it's that forecasting that I think makes architects successful. How can you forecast things that may or may not happen so you can be proactive in the moment?
Yeah.
But so that takes time for someone to understand, to exercise their brain. So I think we challenge them in bits and pieces, but not the whole. in order to see how far their brain can expand. And once it breaks, or once it kind of hits that threshold, we let them feel it, because that's a real feeling that you got to know. Because what that does also do is it creates humility. Like, that brings you back to earth. Because some people, especially maybe younger, aggressive folks, that think, oh, I can do that. I can do this. This is easy. I can do this. Well, maybe you can, but we're going to test it. And as soon as you feel that burn, that's a real feeling. Like, that's some chest pain. That's some pressure. And whether you can handle it or not is up to that individual. Then we know. Then we know how far we can push.
Yeah.
So, it's a trial and effort, or it's a trial by fire, really, is some of it. So probably the same with you, right? It's
the reason I asked you that is as we grow, it's more important for me to delegate more, right? And put people in position and trust them. And this is all stuff that we talk about, but just this morning I was thinking about, I can tell you right now with our company, we've got more smart people than I've ever had in a company before. I trust this group more than I've ever trusted any other group before. And so, but I still find myself wanting to jump in and solve.
Yeah.
Because, I consider, and I think that everything, I take it so seriously, and everything's so important that I don't want to fail. But I recognize that that's where learning comes from. That's where growth comes from. But it's like these small things. It's like everything matters, and a lot of that, I think, comes from the pressure that is put on us and that we put on ourselves. Like, everything is high stakes, and then then the other part of that is we operate really well in a high stakes, right, with a lot of pressure.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we're all really good about jumping in and having an opinion or saying, hey, we need to do this or do that. But what I find for me is that now I'm spending too much time in the weeds, when at this level. So like for any given project, if an issue comes up, there's 3 people before me that are touching that problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the fact, because again, I'm thinking about this morning, something kind of rolled up and hit a text this morning that, asking me for guidance. And I want to jump in and say, yeah, do this, and this, boom. Because I know I can fix that. It's, but I need to stop and be like, hey, that's your thing. And so that's why I asked the question is, how do you, I'm working through giving, trusting people, giving them enough autonomy, enough direction, and to go make decisions on behalf of the company that could have financial implications, that could have schedule implications, and be like, okay, that's, this is you. But then, be willing to hold them accountable too.
Well, know that at this moment, perhaps no one will care more than you.
Yeah.
Right. And that may be the case throughout the history of your career. Maybe not. Maybe, you have partners in your future that you can pull back and they've got it. They're going to problem solve maybe differently, but as an equal.
Yeah.
But right now, as you grow, because I have the same problem. Nothing's good enough, right? Because I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I've got to let go of that, knowing that we're going to solve it in a way that fits our not our standard way of procedure, but our, like, the order of operation, the level of care that our values that we instill in our company. And I have to let go of, person A over here is going to go at it in a maze direction, but eventually they're going to learn a straight path, and I have to help them find that straight path, whatever it is. And there's certain things that bug the hell out of me that I can't let go of, and I catch too late. Like that shit burns me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain things I just won't let happen, meaning like falling down in front of a client or having a level of standard confidence that we need to have in order to maintain client confidence.
Yeah.
And so there's different keys that we're giving people in order to make me feel comfortable, right? And I think that's really what it is. It's like not everybody's on the same playing field, and so you know, it's like your team. You've got to start moving the needles of who's going to manage this operation the best that makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that you can be able to start backing away and doing the other things that you know you need to do in order to make the company grow.
Yeah.
And there's I believe there's a structure. There's a number in everyone's staff that is a good fit for that. And whether you have it or not, we're not there yet. So I'm in the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
But we're working on it, and we're trying to find that structure or that team, right? That perfect balance that everybody can gel together and problem solve together on a particular way that makes me feel comfortable. Because until that happens, I'm going to be nitpicking.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be perfect, and I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep moving the needle staff-wise, project-wise, you know, anything that I can do in order to get that balance. So, you know, it's an imperfect process, but I think is what I'm finding though is if I can keep reminding myself that here's where we want to be. Mm-hmm. You know, however we get there, I don't know. But it is that not hierarchy, but it is that engagement of staff and that level of staff that will allow you to back off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you said about kind of moving, moving the pieces around a little bit. Cause that's, like I said, I've got a group right now that I think is probably the most capable group that I've ever been able to assemble to do what we do. And, at the same time, we're still a relatively new group. You know, the most tenured person's coming on, I think 3 years, at the end of this year. And then we've got, some other folks that are coming on 2 years and stuff like that. But that's still relatively new, and not to mention we're dealing with the dynamic of being all remote. Right? Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting twist that's different in our business. But, everybody's really engaged, especially at the leadership level, and very committed to doing well. Everybody wants to make a decision. Everybody wants to be involved, which is really good. But we're seeing where we're having to move people around a little bit, change up responsibilities, hire some new people to kind of plug a few gaps, and we're still turning the Rubik's Cube a little bit to get it to where we're going to flow a little bit smoother, and because at the end of the day, what we're trying to build a machine that you can successfully run projects through.
Yeah,
and that there will be some level of consistency in that, knowing that we're gonna deal with problems and all that, and but it's building that machine with systems and processes, and so it's different. This is my second time building a company like this, and it just there's different challenges, and how I'm thinking about that is different now.
How do you knowing that you're problem solving continuously every day, every month, throughout the year, how do you recharge? How do you refuel? What do you do in order to maintain? Or do you?
I the first thing that comes to mind is, we moved outside of Austin 2 years ago, and that drive's it's about an hour, let's say, give or take. That hour of leaving, the chaos of everything going on for the day and driving. And I do find myself on phone calls, a lot of the time, but that drive, and throwing on a podcast or something tends to kind of settle me down a little bit, before I get to the house. And then the other thing is I try to shut it off, by 7 PM.
Yeah.
And then I've got, some nightly routines. I've got some morning routines that, kind of get me realigned mentally. And I try not to hold on to anything no matter what, and I've gotten a lot better at that in the later years about, not letting, because some of the problems, some of the bullshit is a little more, it cuts a little deeper, and I tend to hold on to things to try to get it fixed, because I don't like the feeling of having something that's unresolved.
Yeah.
I don't like things weighing on me, so it's nothing.
Can you sleep at night?
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I've I've gone through some pretty tough times, really tough times, and I've never had a problem sleeping.
Yeah, that's not me.
Really?
Yeah. What I've been trying to work on is knowing that I can't solve the problem at night while I'm trying to sleep.
So you wake up in the middle of the night?
Oh, hell yeah.
Do you really?
I'll stay awake all night.
Yeah.
And it's not all the time, but more than it should be.
Yeah.
But as a young kid, growing up, I would always think about my brain won't shut off at night. And so I've tried, I never try the sleep, over the counter sleep remedies but I have tried supplements. I've tried whatever that, holistic kind of things that I can get into, but excessive exercise, just going until I can't go anymore. That's probably the best thing. But trying to parcel your brain so you can rest, because if you don't rest, you're shit.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do anything. But I don't know where I was going with that, but other than, learning how to recharge yourself in a way that allows you to perform equal or better, the next day.
No, I definitely need to get better at that. I mean, in terms of a fitness routine, I need to, that, as we've talked, that used to be a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
That's not anymore. But I've been working on the mental game a lot the last 2 to 3 years. And, using different tools for journaling and for, mind mapping and it really, it goes back to, I think, what I try to do and why I'm able to sleep at night and definitely let stuff go is, through meditation and other things, following these thought patterns, right? And not going down a catastrophe fantasy loop.
Yeah.
Because that's what I used to be, so first chapter of my career owning a business, that things that would happen, I drank and I smoked and I did other, nothing illegal. But that's how I would sedate. And that's how I would treat these, if something happened, I'd run that catastrophe loop of, something would happen and in my mind goes to the fact that I'm going to lose everything and I'll be living in a shack on the side of the road and not able to get a job. Mm-hmm. That used to be a really common, theme for me, is something bad would happen or a problem would happen. And I would run it in my mind all the way down. I was broke and poor and homeless, like legitimately.
Yeah.
And so, it's taken years of now I know, and I feel relatively good about the fact that my mind tries to fuck me all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and those thoughts pop in, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's bullshit, and I try to focus on the fact that I can choose what I believe, and I can choose that, to not attach to certain thoughts. And so all of that practice that I've done in the last few years of getting really, being really intentional and journaling and like, stopping in the moment and going, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I know that's not true. I'm gonna push that aside, and I'm gonna think about what I really want in whatever given situation. That's allowed me more to be, unattached to problems, and I'm able to think more strategically, and it doesn't tend to keep me up at night.
So since you're a scheduler, in your world, you create a pathway, you create a budget and a pathway, and it's achieved, at the milestones that you guys set for yourself, right? How do you deal with the things that you don't have a pathway for? How do you deal with, if you want your company to be here, you don't know how it's going to get there. And there could be the option that it doesn't get there. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's what I aspire to do in that situation is, and I'm going to steal this term, be directionally correct, right? And not worry about the outcome and not be attached to the outcome at a granular level and at a more macro level. And what I mean by that is, at a company level, I've got certain aspirations for where we want the company to be. Now, whether or not we ever get there, I don't know. But I want to do the things today that are going to put us in that direction and make us successful, or give us the best chance for success to get there, right? And and why we want to be at a certain level is simply I want to know what it's like. There's not like a financial. At the company level, there's not like an overriding financial goal. Like, I want to get here because I want to make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
I want to get here because, and there's revenue targets, obviously, for 5 and 10 years out. But it's more of like, man, I want to know what we're capable of, and I want to know what it feels like to be at that level.
Yeah.
Because I've seen companies grow to those levels, and I've been a part of that. But it's different when you're actually kind of up there, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and being in certain conversations and making certain decisions.
Yeah.
And it's the same at a granular level when we're dealing with problems. On a certain project, we've got this mapped out, right? And so it's the whole thing with the schedule is kind of like the Mike Tyson quote of everybody's got a great plan until you get punched in the mouth the first time.
Yeah.
Well, every schedule that we write, day one you get punched in the mouth, something happens, and like, oh well, shit, okay, this is all going to change.
Yeah.
And so it's really staying granular and trying to be directionally correct. Where okay, we're so for example, this morning, real time, we got hit with this problem of a paving contractor. It was scheduled to be there today. We've done everything we needed to up until today to be ready for that contractor to come on site, pave the site so that, okay, tomorrow we can stripe, and the next day we can do this, and the next day we can do that. All that adds up to this CO date that we've got to hit. And now they show up and they don't like the condition of the site. They're like, well, we can't do it today. Oh, and guess what? We can't be back for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, we're trying to solve that problem in the moment, and trying to do everything we can to solve that particular problem. We're not worried about everything else.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, let's just focus on this particular problem first, and then we'll move on to the next problem. And so that's a lot of people. And this took a while to learn. I think a lot of people they worry about the outcome. They focus on it. They want to get there. They want to get there.
Yeah.
and they neglect the real daily incremental needs and requirements. You know, they want the outcome so bad that they neglect the daily. Like, what do I need to do every single day to add for those results and those consequences to add up to what I want at some point in the future?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's real interesting. I think I was that person. I still may be to a particular point, but I've found if I lose focus of the quality of what we do, the service that we give, or that we output, if we lose that focus, which is easy to do, right? Because it's a grind at some point. Then, well, you know, inevitably you fall down on the interest from a staff perspective, you fall down on an interest from an owner's perspective, and you fall down from an interest in the client perspective.
Yeah.
And that's losing sight of that. I think that's focusing on the outcome too much, right? That those two things are real similar. And so if you're in the moment and you're actively processing through problems or design strategies, whatever you want to call it, in a way that fulfills the the overall ambition or the overall motto of what you're trying to do, I think that's where I trying to capture my mindset on the day to day. But that waking up at the night and trying to create avenues of problem solving events that really doesn't matter. Yeah, it does in some sort of scheme, but yeah, I still struggle with that one.
You know, what's funny about that? I sometimes I think that, because, you know, typically if there's a problem and I can sit and think about it enough that I decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to do A, B, C, and D, and then that's it.
Right.
I can let it go.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I'll get to the point again, and I've been pretty disciplined about like 7, sometimes 8 o'clock. I'm done. I'm gonna let it go, you know, and I can sleep, but then I wake up in the morning and then I'm disconnected for an amount of time of when I was thinking about something, and it's kind of off-putting. I'm like, oh shit, I kind of forgot about that. Now I'm getting hit in the face with it. So I almost wish that, you know. Well,
being in the moment is important, right? No matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you're at work, you're in the moment. You pour all of yourself in your work and what your responsibilities are. When you're at home, I try to be in the moment. So I'm focused on my wife and my kids as much as possible.
Yeah.
I set work down. I'm pretty good about that. I can fall asleep, no problem, but then boom, I wake up and then I'm problem solving. And that helps. That doesn't help at all, really. But what you just said is you lose that train of thought whenever you have an intense week, and then you set it down for the weekend, to set it down in a way that you're still processing, to set it down in a way that you don't lose sight of it, but it's healthy, you know, but you're in the moment with whatever else you're doing outside of work. That's that balance. Like, that's that second brain that is somehow working, problem solving in the background.
Yeah.
You know, that recharge, right? The weekend is not necessarily a recharge. A recharge is somewhere where you can completely let go, right? If you're camping or surfing or you're on vacation, maybe or maybe not, but depending on who you're with.
Yeah.
But I also think that recharge is incredibly important, because you're allowed to not think or not process. Mm-hmm. And when you sit down, when you leave a problem that is like fucking killing you because you can't let it go, or you can't solve it, the best thing to do is to walk away from it.
Yeah.
And I try to teach that to our staff all the time, because we talk about efficiency or inefficiency, and they'll continue just noodling. Noodle. I'm going to design it 20 different ways. Well, all 20 are not really what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And once you hit that, you have to realize that you just have to walk away. Either you go home, you take a walk, you just take it out of your mind, because when you come back to it, you'll be better and you'll be able to problem solve that probably.
How do you teach that?
You have to catch it in the moment. It's like a trained brain.
Yeah.
Right. And I have told people to go home, not because they're performing in a way that, that I ask you to go home. It's just, you got to have a break. Like, I can't untrain your brain in the moment to stop. So go home. And I had that moment as coming out of school. I was designing a column. Column. Yeah. In a huge department store. So the column was going to repeat itself 100 times. And he was like, hey, design this column. And I had sketches, walls, and he came over and he was like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, go home. But he didn't tell me why. And I thought that was bullshit, right? So he didn't. Eventually, I understood why he told me to go home, because I came back and I solved it. But anyway, to catch them in the moment, because you can, when someone's been just reeling, you can see it in their face. You can see them huffing and puffing. You can see it on the screen or on their drawing board, whatever it is. You can tell. And it's an easy thing to understand, because everybody goes through it, especially for creatives. And so you catch it, you tell them what's happening, what is this about? Go home, take a break, go eat, go do something. And I think it takes a few times, and then you train their brain to catch themselves in the moment and either ask a question or stop, because you're not doing me any good, because you're wasting my money, you're wasting my time, and you're being inefficient. So go do something else. And it takes a few times, and eventually, it triggers and it works, but it's a process.
How does it work when, if you guys take on a project, and from a creative standpoint, you've got a vision of this project, but then you've got your team working on it, and it starts to deviate from your vision.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It does. Yeah, sure.
Do you always pull it back? And again, I would imagine ego comes involved a little bit. Does it always pull back? And so I guess the question is, how many do you have to ensure that every project, the outcome is aligned somewhat with your vision? Or is there ever a time where it's like, you know what, somebody else's vision is what we're going to put, does that make sense? Like, we're going to put somebody else's idea of how this morphed into this, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I have a real desire not to micromanage. I have a real desire not to reproduce something that we've already have done aesthetically. And
even if you don't like
it? That's not the case. Anything that comes out of our office, I need to like it. Okay. Or else I can't sell it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm usually the one that will talk through hard moments where clients are not necessarily on board. I have to walk them through the path that they can see the light and eventually pay for what it is that we're trying to get them to. Right. So
has the office ever produced something that the client liked but you didn't like, and then
rarely.
Okay.
Rarely.
Okay.
But there's a balance where that's not the way that I solved it. So you have to take your mind away from materiality, color, these subjective things that that I find are questionable without resolution, right? So is black better than white? Is pink better than purple? I don't know. But does it? So what I find interesting is that I can let go in a way to allow people to solve problems outside of me that may not be what I feel is the way that I would have done it. But are there experiential elements that I find real intriguing in a way that allows this thing to be better or different, or create a moment where it's going to be this really nice surprise. Mm-hmm. If I can see that, then I'll let it go. If it's solving a problem that is for sheerly face value, not going to happen, right? So did you think about, yeah, it may look nice, but it's not solving the problem because it doesn't do A, B, or C. And if I can stick to these, to these thresholds that allow us to do things in a way that you can't necessarily say, you might not, you could, what I hope is you put 6 of our projects on the board and all 6 look different. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. In order to do that, we need to have different mindsets, different problem solvers, different aesthetic values that are all achieving this one experiential thing. Yeah. Right. If you can focus on that, then it allows you to remove any subjectiveness. Mm. But are there times that I just say no? Absolutely. Yeah. Like if I don't like it, then I'm not going to be able to sell it. And I did have a moment where in the past I just thought I'm gonna let this ride. I think it's too much. Like it's too much. I don't know what it's about. I can't sell it, but I let it ride. And I was presenting this thing to some pretty well-known folks, and I just bombed. I got sweaty armpits. I was like, what the fuck? I can't talk through it. I don't know. I'm not making sense. And they were so intelligent about the process. They saw right through it. Yeah. And they called bullshit. And I said, never again. That's not going to happen again. Yeah. And so there's a threshold to where if I can believe it, if you can sell it to me and I can understand it on this level of whatever it is it's not aesthetic, but I'll just point back to experience, then I'll buy into it, but I have to believe it. Yeah. So it is removing the ego. Everybody has got a certain level of ego that I need. I think it offers a competitive playing field. You need to want to problem solve. You need to perform at a rate that allows you to succeed or come up with an idea or to make this thing look beautiful in a way that was unexpected. That's what we want. Like we don't want to squash any of that, but you also have to know that somebody else may have a better idea than you, and you can't fall in love. Yeah. Like as soon as you fall in love, you're going to get squashed. Yeah, because it's going to get ripped away. Or it could.
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. So that really puts us in a realm day to day where it's very different. You wake up just like what you said. Yeah, I don't know what's coming at me today when I get back into the office. I have an idea, but oftentimes, every time my idea is incorrect, or I have a list of things that I need to get resolved, that's not going to happen, right? I'm going to go and resolve somebody else's issues, and then at night or some other time, I'm going to find time to resolve my own. So I think that's the interesting thing is it's hard. This is a hard profession. Yeah. And the problem solving is real interesting. And if I had another job, I may not be happy, right? So it's like this love, hate of problem solving, failure, success, highs, lows, not being able to figure it out, but then figuring it out. Like all that stuff's real interesting. So, but knowing that there's a light at the end is real valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's being able to pick yourself up and look that, okay, again, for me, it's like, okay, I'm directionally right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, if I can just, you know, going back to what you asked early on, is like, you know, what is a successful week, is feeling like we were directionally right and we made a little bit of progress.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's good enough. And then doing it again.
It's good enough.
Yeah, that's good enough.